23rd, Tuesday. Let it go day, Mike. Let it go. And,
Let it go. Let it go. Don't hold it back anymore. How about a little
I
Disney sing
love
along
it.
this morning,
I
Steve?
love it. I love it, Mike. I love it. And you know what? Where I was coming from with Let It Go, because, you asked us to do this 30 minutes earlier, and I was just going to let
Yes,
that go,
I
But
appreciate it.
that
You
that's
couldn't let
that's
that go.
me.
Nobody
That's
cares,
me letting it
Steve.
go. Me letting it go, Mike.
Nobody would notice if you didn't say
I know.
anything,
Well,
but
maybe,
that's okay.
maybe. But Mike, I notice,
Yeah,
I notice, you
it's just you and
notice,
me. It's all it is. It's
I
about you and
know,
me.
I know.
You're in a good mood this morning. Did you get a good
So are
night's
you.
sleep?
So are you. I did actually. Thank you for asking. I did. Yeah. I got
Good,
a rating
good.
of 91 last night. So I feel very
Whoa.
happy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa, what do you use to track that? I saw you. Do you have an Aura ring? Is
I
that what
do
that
have the
is?
Aura ring. That's what that
How,
is. Yeah. Yeah.
I,
It is. It's really good. It gives me a lot of data points, and yeah.
that's
I have
cool.
to. I have to. I have to say though, sometimes like when it says I didn't sleep well, or my recovery, or my energy index is low, I'm actually like I actually feel I have more energy today, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So who knows? Who knows?
I've got
But
the
over
Apple
time,
Watch, and I've tried different sleep apps. If anybody has a recommendation for an Apple Watch sleep app
vice
that
versa. So
works,
who knows?
and I'd love to hear about it because I had mixed results. I'd love to know one that keeps track of my snoring. There was one I tried a few years ago when I first got the watch, uh, and it actually recorded me snoring during the night, and it would give me little samples to prove that I was snoring, which I thought was fantastic because my wife was obviously getting data to prove what she has known about me for almost 30 years. So it's so
Uh,
funny that these technologies available, and the Aura Ring was in a featured article this week because the NBA might be wearing them to track
okay.
COVID. Did you read about that?
Ah, I did not read about that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. There's something
Ah.
that you can kind of predict if you might be beginning to show signs of having the COVID-19 infection. Maybe it's your heart rate changes or something like that. But they're doing all kinds of things with technology to help us. So I think it's all good.
Yeah, that is interesting because whenever lockdown first happened, Aura released a questionnaire for wearers to, if they wanted to participate in a program, they could, and I did. I elected to
Oh, really?
submit each day a survey that basically just says how I felt, temperature wise, was I in contact with other people? And then from there, it's probably able to take that base data that Aura is probably able to collect. There's probably information in there it's collecting that I'm not aware of, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure somewhere in the back end, it's able to connect a lot of those different things. And yeah, that's fascinating. That's fascinating.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
really clever. It's a
accelerating
really
this.
clever.
This situation is accelerating the use of all types of technology in our
It is.
workplaces as well, and that's what this show's
Yeah,
about, right? OSW
it
Daily.
is.
What is
It
OSW
is.
Daily, Steve?
I have no idea, man. We're still trying to figure that out. I think I think
The
it's
hashtag.
it's our daily chat.
Yes.
But obviously, no. If anyone's watching, please do drop comments, drop questions, give your thoughts to what we're talking about. We've got a quite a what I would say a tough topic to talk about today, Mike.
Okay.
It's
I'm
it's
ready
a
for you.
sensitive one,
All right.
and I think it's one that's going to cause people opinions. Right? Are tattoos and piercings unprofessional in the workplace? Now, before you give me your opinion and sort of just answer that question, I want to sort of give the context of where this came from.
Okay. Yeah. Where
So
is
this
this
was
coming
this.
from?
So this was a post on LinkedIn. I came across it this morning from Natasha Bowman. Natasha is a TEDx keynote speaker. I'm just looking to my left because I don't want to misquote or misstate anything.
Please.
And she posted this post that actually kind of went viral. And there's a more context to this post, and it's an interesting underlying tone to what to where this comes from. So I'm going to read. So be patient with me.
Sure.
So it starts: why are tattoos unprofessional? Why are piercings unprofessional? Why is sharing pictures of a night out with your friends on social media unprofessional? Why are dreadlocks unprofessional? Because none of it is, she says. What is unprofessional in the workplace is racism, bias, stereotyping, bullying, harassment, intimidation. We've spent way too much time focusing on the wrong things in the workplace. Seen policies about dress code be 2 pages long, while policies about anti harassment, and discrimination are one sentence. Sorry, I'll take the nose piercing over a bully any day. Is how she finished the article. So, although yes, we've titled this "Are Tattoos and Piercings Unprofessional?" and we can talk about that aspect. But in essence, I think where Natasha's coming from is the mindset or the culture or the policy structures that organizations have whenever it comes to dress codes and some of the ways we manage and operate within the organization. I don't think she's saying here that organizations accept racism, bias, stereotyping, typing, but it's more of the policies that are structured that is communicated. You think employee handbook, we need to focus, we're focusing on the wrong things is sort of where I take her position to be. Maybe you get a different perspective, but I'd love to know your opinion or some of your initial thoughts are, because I understand I've just sprung this on you, but as I say, as we call this, say, just let it go, man. Just let it go.
So let it go. I'm free to fly wherever you want to take us today. And Steve, it's an interesting topic, and I can see why it probably generated a lot of activity on LinkedIn. And you wouldn't be trying to create some clickbait with that title, would you? That wouldn't be your style.
I've no idea what you're talking about, Mike. I don't understand that. What is clickbait?
I don't even know what that is. That's some term that the computer people use. But anyway, this topic of dress code or some of these things you're talking about, I have to think to my own career. And I haven't had that many corporate positions. I've often been my own boss. So therefore, I never have had in my own entrepreneurial life a dress code. It was more driven by the branding and the culture of what I wanted to, who I wanted to appeal to, and what the expectations of that culture were. So if I'm going to operate in a certain type of environment, I'm going to try to accommodate to be seen as a professional in that environment. So are tattoos and piercings and dreadlocks professional? To me, my answer is like, depends. It depends on what are you trying to achieve as far as your personal brand as also your corporate brand. But in today's world, I don't even know. In corporate settings, we're talking, I assume this is a workplace program. Yep. So we're talking about office environments. The changes I've seen over the last couple of decades since I've been out here doing my work is dramatic in that we value individualism. We value people being their authentic selves. We value, in broad terms, as a culture, the idea that we shouldn't judge a person's character by how they look on the outside. It's the content of their character on the inside and their behavior and their work ethic and the things that they do to demonstrate who they are as individuals. So I would say, and I don't know I'm curious to know, and I hope you'll give us some examples of some of the controversial feedback, if there is any. I think it doesn't really matter what you look like or how you dress. It's more, or even, it's not even about dress code. You're talking about tattoos and piercings and dreadlocks. Those things to me are more about the individual expression. And I would hope that a culture of an organization would be bring your best self to work. And if that's what that is, then that's you, that's great. I understand in certain industries, how you present yourself to the customer outside the office is where those concerns about dress code may come up more. And again, I've been in sales. I've been a person who's been a representative of organizations before, and I can see that there might be a dress code. I've never seen one written. I don't know if I've ever seen one written. I'm sure there's handbooks that I've missed. Maybe I'm just that kind of guy. I don't read the handbook, but it's more about the culture of the organization and then capturing that culture. Now I was corrected when I'll just give you a very personal example about dress code. When I came into iOffice, I was coming from the printing industry into the software industry, and there's some cultural differences. I was wearing suit and tie or jacket and tie and slacks and, dress pants and dress shoes because that was the culture of the industry I was in. When I joined a software company, I got kind of ridiculed and made fun of a little bit, nudged in a way to say, hey, you need to adapt to our culture, which is jeans and, cooler shoes and no jacket, no tie, or sometimes just a jacket, no tie, and different types of things. So I adapted to fit the culture that I was then a part of. So I think it comes both ways. The organization will have a culture And within that culture, I certainly hope there's no racism or bias based on things like that we shouldn't stereotype people on. But it's okay to have a corporate culture, a corporate brand, and if you buy in, if you want to be a part of that organization, to some degree, you buy into that culture, and you will then accommodate and dress accordingly, like I did. So I don't know if that's going
Yeah.
to answer your question, but it's
No,
interesting.
it's good initial thoughts, and I was writing down different things as you were mentioning and running through things, so that I could respond in a succinct way. But I do relate to your personal thing in a sense of, how do you want to portray yourself to people? I remember when I first started working, I worked for a media company. The whole environment was jeans and t-shirt, and I wore jeans and t-shirt every day.
Sure.
That's what it was. I then remember having a conversation with the financial director of that organization. And it was all about my development, what it is I wanted to do, what my career aspirations were. And, and he simply said to me, he says, like, so if you take a very simple thing about what you do, right, there's multiple ways you can impact how people perceive you in an organization. One way where people perceive you in an organization is how you dress. And he goes, the way you dress is like everybody else. And if you want to be seen like everybody else and you don't want to stand out and you don't want to be different, then you can continue to do that. However, if you want to wear a shirt and tie, then people may receive you different, that you may appear different. And says, so how did you think about that, feel about that? So I took that, and from that day forward, I wore a shirt and tie every day. Now, it was very natural to me all through school. We were shirt, tie, and blazer. That's what we did at school when I was growing up. So it
Right.
was very natural for me for that. So I did that. I did notice a difference in how people receive me, because I'm walking around with a shirt and tie on. The people like almost second guess, like, who are you, even if they don't know you, and so on and so forth. And then there's the other people who do know me and go, dude, what you doing? Why are you wearing a shirt
Yeah.
and tie? And I followed that all through my career. Today, I
Sure.
mean, I'm very well known for always wearing a shirt, tie, and jacket. I never take my jacket off,
Interesting.
and that's sort of my perception. That's how it is, because I do remember those people through my career who dressed certain ways, and whenever you're sitting with this executive leadership, they notice those little things. So mine was more about what is the perception I want to actually portray to senior leadership. And it's whether it's conscious, whether it's subconscious, the way we look, the way we act, the way we talk, the way we do things gets noticed. And
Sure.
and that's sort of where I came from. And so that was a personal decision. Now, me dressing like that, just exactly like you said, you go into a software environment and you just stick out like a sore thumb, and people are like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" That's fine, but I haven't worked in that environment, so I don't know
Right.
how I would react. I don't know. I'm sure I would, perhaps just lose the tie, lose the jacket, but I'd still probably wear a shirt, because I think getting up in the morning and thinking putting on a shirt is a lot easier to do and less stress on my brain than thinking about something else to wear. But
Yeah.
I think
There's a
it's
couple thoughts there. If I could just go back to, because you brought up a
Mhm.
great point, and there's a couple of old cliches, I'll call them, because we're talking about two different cultures. We're talking about the broader culture of our United States of America and the
Mhm.
popular culture, and the way people perceive fashion and dress, and within the business world, as that's changed over the last decades. And then you've got the individual organization culture, as you described, your organization, whether it's a media company or a financial company or a law firm or a whatever it may be, that culture is going to be different and will vary. And that continues to be the case, I believe, even in this broader culture change.
Mhm.
So the cliche part is, I used to have that same advice, and I think it's good. It was good advice. When I first started my career, was dress for the job you want, not for the job you have.
Mm.
And it basically says, yeah, I'm not going to be satisfied with this particular job. I'm looking to move up in my career, and therefore I'm going to dress professionally and stand out. And then hopefully my behavior, work ethic, and so forth would match that. And you'd move up in your career. I think to a degree that still works, but because the culture's changed overall, and then corporate cultures have changed, you need to kind of adapt and modify your personal preferences and brand and ambition, and match that with what it takes in your organization. Like you say, if it's a software company, what I need to do to stand out or to look the part is going to be different than it was in my old industry. So So I think all those are valid points. The question, I think the reason that the article is controversial is because there was a tinge of racism
Yeah.
in the idea of a corporate, maybe HR department, whatever, handbook putting together ideas saying you must dress this way, you must not have tattoos, piercings, dreadlocks, etc. And I think that is a different question,
Right.
and it's a more difficult question
It is.
because it becomes then, what if there's a conflict between a person's who they are personality wise, whether they have tattoos or piercings, and whether it fits the corporate culture. And I think that's where you get into the sticky part, and that's not as easy an answer. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. So were there any brilliant ideas beyond the article itself that you saw that jumped
So
out to you?
I did scan through, and most of the comments were either in support of what was being said, some were disagreeing with what was being said. And I guess, I'm happy to give my opinion in a sense of, I think it's almost a given that it is unacceptable within an organization for racism, bias, stereotyping, bullying, any of that harassment,
You
intimidation.
hope so. You would hope
I
so.
think
Yeah.
the culture is that's not there, right? That's why it's not. It's assumed. It's almost taken as a given that as a human being, that's how you treat another human being is how you want to be treated yourself.
Yes.
Now, obviously, that's not always the case. However,
Right.
within an organization, I think it's just assumed, and it's almost whether it is a one sentence thing that needs to be said in a handbook. One sentence is probably all that needs to be said. This will not be tolerated, right? So it's just accepted that that's what it is.
Sure.
But and I think that's where it comes from, right? And the way we treat other people is just that's why we don't need to be told. Well, I know I don't need to be told. I know you don't need to be told, Mike, and other people can make the assessment for themselves. We don't need to be told how that these things are unacceptable. It's just a given that this is not and should not be a behavior that actually is within the organization. That's how I interpret what Natasha is actually saying.
So the headline of the specifics, how do you deal with that? If their personality, and again, it's different between, and it gets complicated because, and I may not know some of the lines between, hairstyle, tattoos, piercing, and racism. I wouldn't make those connections. I would say it would be
Right.
more style than race, but I don't know if people use those things as excuses for their racism. Maybe that's what the article was saying, was that people will see outward displays of fashion or style and then perceive it as something that they can use as an excuse to hide their racism. I don't know, but it's an interesting topic, and I'll read the article when you have a chance, because I don't think we're going to solve it here, but I think we are both on the same page, and I would hope most of our listeners on the same page, is that we shouldn't certainly discriminate based on race or anything like that. But there are definitely, thoughtful ways of approaching your career and, dressing for the role you want, and also dressing for how you want to be perceived, and building a brand that fits the mission and the culture of your organization. And I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And to the points you made, it's there may be many environments where, as we just both know, how we dress is inappropriate because it's just not accepted.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just not accepted. So, and that's fine. And that's fine. We have to adjust,
Yep.
And that's the part of it, right? We all have to have a look, to your point, right? Dress the job we want in the organization we want. And if that organization has a certain culture, has a certain way of doing things, then, if that's what we want to do, then we will make those necessary adjustments, right? So it's a tough one. It's a really delicate one, but I'm glad we had an open conversation about that, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. What else you got? We got a few more minutes here.
Okay, all right. Let me see. Let me see what else I have, Mike. It's good that it's good that you sort of just throw this on me. You're like, okay, topic. What's next? What's next,
man? I could bring some stuff to the table. I have a couple ideas.
So it actually dovetails nicely. So here's the headline: You're never too old to reinvent yourself. That's the headline.
Yeah, this ties together.
And so you've got what we just talked about, and then we've got what we talked about yesterday. A lot of the Simon Sinek conversation we had yesterday, right? And this is this is Professor Gary Martin from based in Australia. He submitted an article. It's on LinkedIn. You can go check it out, where he talks about COVID-19 with. Again, we talked about this yesterday a little bit. 45 million people unemployed.
Mm.
Those folks who are currently unemployed, what is it that they need to do? What is it they want to do? What is the future? And do they need to reinvent themselves? And if so, how do they go about doing that? And if we just take the premise of what we just talked about, what is the organization you want to work for? What is the role you want to work for? Who are the people you want to work for? Because more often than not, I mean, I remember putting up a survey at an open source workplace. It was, do you leave a company because of the organization or your manager? And the majority of people leave the organization because of their manager.
Right. I remember
So
you saying that.
we have to sort of take that back and take that in. So again, it's really important to understand who is your manager, get to know that manager before. But in essence, this is article about how do you reinvent yourself? And tying into that, going back to Simon Sinek, I watched an address he gave to a graduation. I just watched it this morning,
Okay.
and he was talking about this environment that we're currently operating in. Yes, you're graduating from this. It's remote, it's virtual. You're not with your team. You're not graduating with your class, but actually embrace it. Embrace this change. This is a change that no one's ever experienced before. Embrace the opportunity that this also presents. There are going to be so many new things that get created, new technologies. They're going to be spun off. They're going to be accelerated. They're going to grow. How do you embrace it? Right? We can look at it and go, this is really unfair. This is really unfair. That's happening to me. I'm not getting to do this. I'm not getting to do that. But actually, how do you embrace that emotion? How do you look for the upside? Right. And then he then goes into the infinite game and he talks about all those other things that we talked about yesterday. And it was really quite cool, actually. So it ties
That is
nicely
cool.
with what we've sort of talked about these three pieces of content today, and how do we reinvent ourselves, understanding that we have to embrace the environment we're in today, but also be conscious of the culture that we want, where we want to go and work, and who we want to work with.
Wow. Yeah. Some really good stuff. And I can only imagine what so many are going through, those 45 million. I hope we are supporting those folks in a way that is most useful. And what I mean by that is that pointing them to the Simon Sinek's of the world, pointing them to
Mm-hmm.
the organizations like IFMA and Cornet, where you can find new credentials and upskill and reinvent yourself. If your role has evolved or your role has become obsolete, I think that's something that we all have to face. I've faced it. I'm sure you faced it. The idea of what I was doing 5 and 10 and 15 years ago is just not the same as what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
today and what I do to make a living today. And if as a middle-aged guy, I want to consider myself still, middle-aged, not old guy yet, but it's harder the older you get. I'll just put it that way. The more we get set in our ways, and it's the human nature, right? We are comfortable doing what we're good at. And anytime you are asked to do something outside of your immediate current capabilities or skill set, it gets uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the constant now, because technology continues to advance and the workplace continues to change, and COVID-19 impacts our economy and the political decisions being made, and the evolution of the marketplace is accelerating and it's changing. So it's only going to continue to require us to adapt, to upskill, to learn new things, to learn new technologies, understand how to use new devices, understand how to do different types of social media, brand building, all those things that shape a professional career is going to continue to change. So I love the phrase and I continue to use it. And I wish I knew who originally said it. I know I'll give credit to a friend of mine, Jay, who gave me this maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Be comfortable being uncomfortable is my
Mm.
motto. And I'm not sure where he got it, but it was something that it's this consistent state of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and just being comfortable there. I'm uncomfortable because I'm doing something new, learning something new. And it's uncomfortable, and I have to be comfortable in that state because it's a constant state at this point. Yes, you'll have moments where you find yourself doing well. I joked about building those chairs last weekend, or the first chair was very uncomfortable. By the fourth chair, I was really pretty good. I could have made a career out of putting those deck chairs together because I had learned the skill. But, it's that next thing's always going to be around the corner, that new technology, new skill, new change in our workplace. So I think it's a constant state of being, and there are great leaders, thought leaders like Simon, Seth Godin, others that have inspired us and can inspire you day by day to keep it going. Who's that? Seth. Yes. This is marketing.
Your buddy. Yeah. I
read that one last summer, and
there you go.
Good book. So, how about you? Are you comfortable being uncomfortable, Steve?
I've learned, or I'm learning, and continue to develop that skill.
Yeah.
And when I sort of came up with the concept of doing open source workplace, at that point, I hadn't posted anything on social media. I hadn't posted anything on LinkedIn. Rarely had I liked something on LinkedIn. And obviously, to create open source workplace and do what I do today, that would have to change, and change dramatically. So the actual process of me getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, liking something, posting something, sharing something, comment on something, stating an opinion, that was so hard.
Sure is.
And then it's having the courage to volunteer to talk at something, the courage to then walk on stage and express tough questions or answers to tough questions, and then sitting down and actually then interviewing people, approaching people to be interviewed, approaching people to sort of get engaged and sort of contribute to open source workplace and so on and so forth,
Yep.
So uncomfortable. Every day is still a challenge, right?
It still is.
But as things evolve, then so do the skill sets, right? And those are the things that we all have to challenge ourselves each day to do something uncomfortable. And so it's something that I absolutely totally agree with you. It's something I consciously have to do. I consciously have to, okay, what's going to make me uncomfortable today? How am I, why didn't I do that? Right. And is it a fear factor? So if somebody's watching this and it's like, okay, so I want to reach out to somebody, but I don't know how they'll respond to me. Well, then, think about that. Well, what would make somebody respond to them? The best way to make someone respond to you is to give them a compliment. Compliment them on something maybe they've posted, something they've said, something you observed, and as we think about those folks that want to reintegrate and redevelop themselves and reinvent themselves for going forward, who are the people you want to be like? Who are the people that sort of you feel would be a great ally or a great person to have in your corner? How can you build a team of people that can help you, educate you, be a part of you, and shoot a few emails, shoot a few messages on LinkedIn. It's so easy to connect with people today. Open source workplace, go on there. There's a list of, 5,000 people listed on open source workplace. Go and find out who are those people in industries that you really like. Shoot a quick message, just say hello, and see what happens. And my experiences these days is that most people will respond if approached in the right way and in a collaborative in a good way. I'm trying to think of the right words, but they're kind of escaping me. But
so many thoughts, and I know we're out of time today, but let's pick this up tomorrow. I want to get into some of the ways you do it and how, and maybe I could share a few ideas of how the audience can get themselves into a position where they're comfortable being uncomfortable. Let's do it tomorrow.
That's great. All right, man. Sounds good. All right. Cheers. Have a good day.